One of Michigan Farm Bureau's many member benefits is Ford's $500 cash bonus offer. Well noted in our fall 2012 member benefits newsletter, it featured a picture of Henry Ford sitting on a bale of straw. Recently, we received an email from associate member Archie Noon. He wrote to tell us he noticed the photo of Henry Ford and wanted us to know he was there the day the picture was taken. Needless to say, we needed to know the rest of the story. Archie Noon was born on July 8, 1918, to Irish immigrants Edward and Bridget Noon in the front room of their home, as he tells it, on the corner of Brainerd and Grand River in downtown Detroit. Edward worked for the Ford Motor Company at the Highland Park plant building the Model T. It was the first automobile production facility in the world to implement the assembly line. But with the Depression, Edward Noon would eventually lose his job at Ford. The time period found many school-aged kids looking for work, including young Archie. Like many others his age, he was a newsboy. But thanks to one specific job posting for students at the Detroit Board of Education, Archie Noon's life was forever influenced and changed.
They had sort of a semi-employment office for young people, and they would find out, if you're looking for a job, why don't you go over to the Detroit Leland Hotel? They need a busboy. Or go to the Book Cadillac. They need somebody to work in the kitchen. So we got that kind of information. So one day I was in there and they said, Henry Ford is looking for 60 boys to put on a farm out in Dearborn, to farm 600 acres out there and do basically grow soybeans for the purpose of him using the soybean in the manufacturing of his automobile.
65 boys would move to Camp Legion in Dearborn in May of 1938, living and working there until October of that year. They were taught every aspect of how to farm. The boys were self-governing, with a camp foreman and field foreman chosen among themselves. On the day Henry Ford's picture was taken on the straw bale, Archie Noon received a farming lesson from Mr. Ford himself.
I was cultivating many rows of soybeans that we had planted. And when Mr. Ford left taking this picture, he came over to where I was cultivating, and he waited for me to get to the end of the line that I was cultivating. And I stopped and got off and naturally talked to him. And he said, "What's your name, son?" And I told him, "My name is Archie." He said, "Well, you shouldn't let all those weeds accumulate in the bottom of that cultivator. Have you got a jackknife?" And I said, "No." He pulled a jackknife out of his pocket and came over to the cultivator, and with his jackknife cut the weeds away from that were being accumulated. And he said, "You don't want to let that happen. Get yourself a jackknife and be sure you don't let it accumulate." So he was very much involved with everything that we did.
Ford constructed a veritable city of tents with wood floors, a dining hall, bathhouses, and even a chapel with services conducted by the boys. One other structure built was called the Farm Store. It too was operated by the boys, providing a place to sell the vegetables they grew. Each earned $2 a day for their labor and vegetable sales, and by the end of their stay, each had earned roughly $130.
The produce that we sold there was other than soybeans. It was actually basically what we call truck gardening. And to me, again, that was another step in understanding how important vegetables were and how people would clamor to come and buy fresh vegetables. And there were always different various kinds of vegetables that we had. So that whole idea of being able to sell and attract people to come and buy the farm products that we had raised was interesting to us.
When the harvest was complete in the fall of '38, the boys were officially done at Camp Legion, but it didn't mean they were done working for Henry Ford. He gave them the opportunity to work in his auto plants. When the war effort ramped up, Archie Noon took a job at Ford's Willow Run assembly plant, building B-24 Liberators.
When the airplane came off the assembly line, I was one of the mechanics who would fly with the B-24, and we would be selling the B-24 to the Army engineers. They would fly with us, and we, the mechanics, would have to actuate the different parts of the airplane for them. And my job was to actuate all the hydraulic mechanics, which was the landing gear up and down, the flaps, the gun turrets, anything that was hydraulic. That was my job.
Archie Noon went on to work in the insurance business for many years, and steadfast about staying fit, he began to run, even participating in several marathons. To this day, Archie's a member of the National Association of Ski Instructors and still skiing at 94. As a member of the 10th Mountain Division of the U.S. Army during World War II at Camp Hale in Colorado, you'd think it's where he'd learned to ski. But the story isn't quite that romantic.
They gave us skis, white uniforms, everything that we were needed to camouflage in the snow with. The guys that I was sent there with, we never got to put on our skis. The job I got was looking after the mules, cleaning the mules, because they did a lot of mule packing. I learned a lot about mule packing, and one day I was working in the mule stables, and it's always messy in there. There's always mule manure, and I fell and broke my ankle. The greatest thing that ever happened to me, that kept me from going with my friends over to the Volturno Valley to Italy to be in the Army over there. They sent me back to Florida, and that's how I got involved in the prisoner of war camp. So it was all beneficial as I look back on it now.
Finally, with the interview complete, Archie picked up a sheet of paper with a list of things he did in his life. Number 2 on the list read 1938 Camp Legion. Number 1 on the list read Western Union Courier 1934 World Series. When asked about it, he stated he was just that, positioned in the press box next to Tigers broadcaster Ty Tyson. Tyson would hand telegrams to Archie and tell him which player, coach, or celebrity to take it to. It's very possible he could have delivered one to his future employer Henry Ford, who was in attendance for the games. But of all the jobs Archie Noon had, the one he's particularly proud of was at Camp Legion.
Camp Legion introduced me to the whole concept of farming and the importance of farming, and to the matter of how important soybeans being used in the manufacturing plant, and then soybeans being used as a food product and to be treated the way we were by Mr. Ford himself. For him to be with us and come over and eat breakfast with us at times, to come over for dinner and bring George Washington Carver with him. The experience was just absolutely, it changed my whole life.
The close to 600 acres once known as Camp Legion has long been developed and is adjacent to Ford's World Headquarters. Those who live and shop there may be unaware of the historical significance of that land, but thanks to Archie Noon, we now know and appreciate his willingness to share.